today I'm going to do a 4-part harmony. I'm going to step through the whole process. I'm going to assume that you know already most of the components, how to do cadences, how to voice each of the chords, how to write all the chords out in the key. So I'm going to assume that you are familiar with all of those processes, so that as I work through this, you can just see the whole way through and all the checking that you need to go through. So I'm going to start with the cadences first. Here you will have the phrases, of course. So there's 2 phrases. They will be shown. I should put them in so you can see. So they will be shown, and I'm going to start with this final cadence here. So F major, and we're ending on the tonic. So let me get a note and start filling it out. So putting in the bass first. I'm going to complete the whole bass line and make sure I've interpreted everything correctly and all of the key harmonic components are there. So F major ending on the tonic, and I can see a clear 5-to-1 perfect cadence at the end. So that's not very tricky. This cadence here, it's clear. G belongs to chord 5. So we have an imperfect cadence over here, so going to put that in. And there are a number of options here. I'm going to choose 4. So I'm going to go 4 to 5, and what's helping me decide that is the easy contrary motion of using chord 4. Sometimes you need to use chord 2 to 5 for the imperfect cadence. But so things like contrary motion, avoiding hidden consecutives, particularly by the fact that these 2 are leaping. So that's working quite well. I'm happy with that. Now I need to find a way to approach into each cadence. So looking at this final cadence first, ideally it's very common to have a first inversion harmony stepping into the cadence. Ideally, it would be nice if it could move by step, if you could find the right first inversion chord that could just move by step. Beautiful voice leading. It won't always be the case, but if you can make that work, that would be very desirable. I can see an opportunity here to use chord 2 in first inversion. So by first inversion, I'm going to put the B flat into the bass, and that's working really well because now I'm able to move to chord 5 by step. Beautiful. Going from a more subtle, sensitive harmony with the first inversion, resolving to that root position chord is ideal. All right, so I've got my approach chord there. Let's see what I can achieve over here. So chord, the note C, we could have chord 5. Now, so if I did chord 5 first inversion there, leaping that tritone, I'd be leaping from the leading note down to the 4th note of the scale. It's tritone, which is an awkward, a more jarring leap. Is there another option? So the secret to this game is, what are your options? Knowing your options, being able to calculate them is so important. So C could also be chord 1. So would I be able to use chord 1 first inversion? So stepping down there, and I've struck gold here, so that's going to work really well. Again, the contrary motion makes this such a good option. Chord 1, first inversion, stepping in to chord 4. So that's my reason for choosing chord 4 here. And the contrary motion is fantastic. So all very good there. Now let's work from the beginning now. The melody is starting on the 3rd of chord 1. So I can put in chord 1 there. Now whenever you see, there are a few things to watch out for, but whenever you see 3 to 1, you can go 1 to 3, so it's very comfortable to step from chord 1 to chord 1 first inversion. It's a good way of continuing chord 1 harmony yet keeping the parts moving. So you never want to just repeat the same chord in a row, because that is static. It's just not going anywhere. The art of filling this in is learning to be able to move the harmony around and use all of the key features that you're learning. So 1 to chord 1 first inversion is fantastic. It works the other way around too. If you ever see 1 to 3, you could go 3 to 1 is also another desirable option. But in this case, you've got to work with what you were given. Oops, hang on, I moved that around. There you go. Okay, so chord 1 to chord 1 first inversion. So now I'm going to look at the next note, D. So we've got either chord 6 or chord 4. From that first inversion chord, it's wonderful to be able to move by step. First inversion chords should offer you more stepwise motion in the bass voice. That's part of what they're intended to achieve, because it helps with contrary motion, helps with smooth voice leading. So that's working very well. What I will need to watch is when I'm doing the other parts, that wide leap in the soprano voice. I'll have to be careful about that. But for now, that bass line's working really good. Let's have a look at the next phrase. So we end on the dominant chord here. We could continue. It's lovely to be able to continue the same chord moving on. We could, if we wanted, return to chord 1. But I think moving on from that same chord is a much greater flow of harmony. I'm going to step to the first inversion there, which again, moving by step to chord 1. It's just such a lovely thing to go from that first inversion chord, a more vulnerable and emotional harmony, then to step to the root position chord works really well. All right, now I've got a few little issues to solve here. I'm going to try chord 6. I think mainly because it's going to give me some contrary motion down to my chord 2 first inversion. 6 to 2, it's following the cycle of fifths. It's very strong. So now that leads me to what I'm going to do here. Now, chord 4 I think will work quite well for me. Again, the contrary motion is of particular interest to this solution and my choice. So I'm always going to favour, particularly with root position chords, so moving to octaves and fifths between bass and soprano. You've got to be very careful that you don't fall into hidden consecutives, but that's only going to happen if the soprano is leaping to the fifth or the octave. I'm all good here, and I've got the contrary motion anyway, so very strong. What I should take note of is at this stage, you should know the interval distance between the bass and the soprano to make sure you don't have hidden consecutives. So what do we got here? Well, there's a 3. That's a 6. That's a 3rd. That's a 3. That's a 3. That's an 8. And that's a 5. That's a 6. That's a 3. That's an octave. That's a 3. That's a 6. That's a 5. And that's an octave. So I've now just checked that I don't have any consecutive fifths or consecutive octaves between my bass part and the soprano voice. So, check it now. Before you go to add the other voices, make sure that that's all checked out. All right, so everything's looking very good. I can get rid of that now, or I might just leave them up for you. So let's just move them down a little bit, out of the way. Now I'm going to complete the other voices, and basically I'm going to start at the beginning and work chord by chord, adding the alto and the tenor voice. Basically, we want the alto and the tenor voice to move as smoothly as possible in the inner voices. The alto should move at the bottom of the treble clef, and the tenor should move as high as possible. Keep the tenor high along the top of the bass clef. It's very important to try to keep the tenor high. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes you're forced, depending on the positioning of the soprano voice, but I'm going to start here. The first thing to ask, okay, here we go. Is the third of the chord there? Yes, that's there. They've got the A, so I can only double either the root or the fifth. So, all right, I'm going to, first of all, just operating this program, I'm just going to turn, sorry, I'll do this another way. I'll add another note. Add the C, and I'm going to make the C second voice. So I'm going to put the fifth in there. Now, because the soprano goes down to the F there, that's okay. I could do that. I could even have a unison here if I needed it. I'll try the fifth. I'm just concerned about being pushed down. So I'm going to turn this into the second voice. There we go. And now I can start adding the tenor voice in. So I might have to go down to the octave here, but I'm serving myself notice that that tenor is getting into the lower region, so I am a little concerned about that. For chord 1, second inversion, I think I could stay on the C. I think that's going to be okay. Now here I might, I'll just get the next voice. Oh, whoops. No, I did the wrong thing there. I need the blue voice. Fix that up. So putting in that crotchet there. So that looks good in and of itself. And I've got the inner voices not moving very far. I'm a little concerned about the lowness of this tenor voice. It would be possible to use a unison. A unison, you wouldn't want to, well, you can't use it twice in a row. You've got to be very careful about crossing over voices, but a unison is okay, and it can alter my approach here. So when you get two chords, let's check for consecutives. All right, down a third, so soprano moves down a third, alto is the same, tenor has moved up a fifth, and the bass has moved up a third. So they're all different, so there are no consecutive fifths, so I'm confident about that. So I'm ready to move on to the next one. The reason I've moved up to that fifth is to help my approach into the next chord. I'm a bit nervous because of the highness of this D. I'm certainly concerned. So that's okay. If I put the alto up to that F, I haven't crossed over voices. If I went any higher, that'd be very problematic, but that's okay. Borderline, but yes, that's okay. So that gets me the fifth there. Because the soprano is so high, we're being careful not to have greater than an octave between alto and soprano, and of course alto and tenor. It's okay to have more than an octave gap between bass and tenor. All right, now just need to fill in my tenor voice. So that's working well. Let's check for consecutives. Up a sixth, up a fourth, down a second, up a second. So again, we're doing well. There's no consecutives there. All right, next chord. I've got here in mind chord 1, first inversion. So that should make harmonizing quite straightforward. Inversions really help with avoiding consecutives because of the more sixth-based harmony. sixth and third based harmony. It just really helps. So it's unlikely you'll have consecutives at that point. All right, so for the tenor, I will move, let's see, okay, I can go and double the fifth there. That's going to work. And now we can check. Down a second, the same, up a second, down a second. So I've got two voices that have stepped down a second. Now that's the bass and the soprano. So let's check. Well, we did check before, but they're a third apart. So we don't have consecutives there because we can see here from our checking from before. That's they're a third apart. So we're all good. Now coming into our cadence, I think we can have the green voice. Right, so I can have the alto onto the F. And I can already see I should be able to very comfortably step down to the third of chord 5. All right, now that leaves the tenor. So I can't step down to the B flat there because then I would have consecutives and I would have left the third of the chord out. So contrary motion is going to look wonderful here. And so the tenor can sit on the third of the chord. I like it because it's high and that's really helping me. So let's check. Down a second, same, up a second, up a second. So two voices are up a second. Bass stepping up a second and the tenor is stepping up a second. So A to C, so they're a third apart. B flat to D. So we're all good there. And now just for the tenor to finish us off here. So should be able to step down. We've got the third and the fifth. Should be able to step down and double the root note of the chord. Let's check for consecutives. Down a third, down a second, up a second. All right, we've got two voices stepping down a second. The alto steps down a second and the tenor steps down a second. So they are a third apart. D to F, C to E. So we're good. Moving on to the next phrase, continuing up. We need to be careful here. I didn't mention this before, but be very careful when you are using first inversion chords that you don't double the third. The third is already there, so we can't use that again. All right, so let's see what we're going to do. I might put the alto onto the G. Might step nicely to the F there, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Now let's go to the tenor. And I think the tenor should be able to step nicely from that C, so doubling the root note there. So I've been careful not to double the third of the chord. And things are looking pretty good because I can see now being able to just move the tenor voice to the C. So we are not up to harmonising a Bach chorale here. So at this level of your learning, you should be trying to keep these inner voices as steady as possible. All right, let's check for consecutives. Down a third, down a second, same, up a second. They're all different. There's no consecutives, so we're good. All right, so for the four-part, so let's see, for the alto voice on the third beat, now I might come down, need the second voice. I might come down to the D because helping face the future. Right, so sometimes you need to be preparing the voices for moving. So I think that's going to work well, and that's going to help me then go into this chord 6 there. All right, let's try for the tenor now. So seeing the contrary motion, I should be able to move down. Now it's okay, this is another little get out of jail card. You can leave the fifth out in the interests of smooth voice leading. And I think it's going to help a much better approach, particularly going into chord 6. and I think that's worth taking advantage of that little trick. So you can see I've left the fifth out, but it's just so that I'm approaching this chord 6 ready to get into the last bar as smoothly as I can. So I'm going to take advantage of that. So now let's check for consecutives. So down a fourth, the same, down a second, up a third. So they're all different, so we don't have consecutives. Did I check here? Up a second, down a third, down a second, down a fifth. They're all different, so we're all good. So everything's worked very well so far. So now into my final bar. So this is chord 2, first inversion. That D is going to move along very smoothly, and I think I might put that alto up to the third there, which would be a nice step. Moving by step is good. Now for my tenor voice, and moving to I should be able to not double the third. That's what I need to be careful. So I'm going to have to go down to the G there, because I'm using chord 2 in first inversion. So doubling the root note is a much better situation, particularly since I'm moving in contrary motion between those two voices, the tenor and the soprano. That makes the next step very easy. You know you've made a good decision when it's very easy to move to the next chord. And I'm seeing another very gentle, need the right note, step up to the third of the final chord for my final cadence. So that just leaves now the final note. Now I'm on the third, there's the leading note. There's a little rule, there's another little get out of jail card, and it's part of the tradition is that if you do have the leading note on an inner voice, you can step down to the fifth. Whoops, need the right value for that note. Right, let's check. Same, up a second, same, up a second. We've got two voices stepping up a second. B flat to D is a third, C to E is a third, so we don't have any consecutive fifths. That's good. And the final one, down a second, down a third, up a second, up a fourth. They're all different. There are no consecutives. Okay, so there's a quick, as quick as I can, and talking at the same time, stepping through a 4-part harmony, a very simple basic one. There's a lot more to learn with this. I will do other videos that will address certain aspects of this, plus there is also completing one in a minor key and some of the tricks that you need to learn for that. So I hope this has been helpful. Support the channel, like and subscribe, and look forward to some more support with getting on top of your theory. So thank you for watching.